today we want to wrap up our black and white module. And to begin with, I want to talk about why we're starting with black and white in this course. And the primary reason we're starting out with black and white photography is because it really teaches us about composition in a way that color can obscure our understanding of design and composition. And even though this is a class that's heavily focused on digital tools of Lightroom and Photoshop, those are in service of our overall goal of making great photographs. And so we have to address photographic composition and design first. Just some three simple ways to convert an image from color to monochrome. And this should heighten our awareness of the relationship of color in our scene, because ultimately what we're trying to do is create images that create the illusion of three-dimensional depth most of the time, not always, but most of the time we're trying to create the illusion of depth. And so we have to understand how colors relate to one another. And so to begin with, I'm just going to pick a colorful image out of this library right here, go into the develop mode. And this has quite a few colors. We looked at the other day, it's got all the primary colors in it. And the easiest, the most direct way, obviously, would be to just simply remove all the saturation, right? And that would be one way to do that. And for us to be able to see the differences, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of virtual copies by hitting the Command and apostrophe key. So Command apostrophe, for those of you on a PC, that would be a Control apostrophe, and you'll see that that makes a virtual copy that allows me to make changes to it. And so I'm just going to go ahead and just remove the saturation. That's one possibility. Now I'll go back to my color image again, and I will do a Command apostrophe, and we'll do another technique. And one that I really like, actually, is to go in and go into our profile browser and actually look at different ways those colors get mapped to black and white tones. Like that one really emphasizes the blue sky. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and play with that one. Okay, and I'll just set that right there and then close it. So that would be just using a camera profile or very similar to using a preset. And I think it's really important that we understand that when working with Lightroom and Photoshop, any digital software, there are probably a dozen ways to do everything we want to do. What I want to emphasize in this course is for you to understand the greater understanding of the concepts behind what we're doing, because there are lots of different ways to accomplish the identical look and feel to an image. We need to understand really what we're looking at is the relationship of colors to grayscale values, with the effort being put towards strong design and strong texture and all the things that really make an image great, to put it bluntly, right? So now I'm going to do another variation, a third variation, another virtual copy there, and that would be to go ahead and move it over just to a simple black and white, and that's very similar to the Desaturate version that we did. If you look at, it's virtually identical to just Desaturate, and in fact, if you hit the V key on your keyboard, it will toggle back and forth between color and black and white. So I use the V key all the time just to get a quick look at whether or not this is an interesting image worth playing with in monochrome. But then when I do that, I actually want to go down to our channel mixer, our color mixer, which allows me to change the relative relationship between those colors and their luminosity value. And so I can brighten up yellow. I can play with green. Look how that's pulling in a little more texture on the siding of that house, which has that great shadow right there. And so there I'm playing with magenta, and that's affecting the sideboard of this old truck. And for me, I made this image, by the way, because it reminded me of my childhood when we first moved from Los Angeles to Spokane. I'd never seen dirt roads. I'd I'd only seen snow once on a vacation. And all of a sudden, we're living on a dirt road lined with maple trees and heating a house with wood. And so for me, making this photograph and remembering when we had to buy cords of wood and I had to split and stack wood as a child to help heat the house, just brought back fond memories. And the datedness of the truck was interesting. And it also is a juxtaposition between the iconic white picket fence of what we associate with the American dream versus the sort of Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck version of labor, that the laborers are doing the work to bring the wood and make it available for our pristine homes. And so those are some of the reasons I took the photograph. But as I'm playing with it, I can play with those relative values. I kind of like brightening up the red to where it really brings out this back of the truck here. One thing you want to watch out for, and this is an old image with an old camera, so it's pretty noisy image on here, but you want to watch out when you darken something, you get kind of this posterized effect, or you get these artifacts where it doesn't blend so well. So you want to kind of watch as your colors are mixing there, that you don't overdo it to where you get these rough edges, okay? So that's a third technique for color correction. A fourth technique, and the last one we'll do for today, is to take this image and actually go into Photoshop. And I'll just edit a copy. So Command E on a Macintosh or Control E in Lightroom, Control E on a PC will open your image in Photoshop. And so the other technique that works really well, actually I lied, I'm going to show two more techniques. So when I am in Photoshop, as I was telling you the other day, the first thing I like to do is look through the 3 red, green, and blue channels. And you'll notice that typically an image will look best in one of those 3 channels. Quite often, not in the case with this one, but quite often the green channel is quite lovely. And as I was pointing out the other day, the human eye sees more in the green portion of the electromagnetic radiation, the visible spectrum. Our human eyes see much more detail in green than we do in the red and the blue channels. So quite often there's just a lot of information there for us to look at. So I can look at this in these individual channels, and really isn't that interesting how dramatic that change is. Blue is a very dramatic. I will point out that the blue channel is interesting for its historic context. Early photographic processes in the 1840s, 1850s, particularly well known in America with Matthew Brady's Civil War photographs, were taken on wet plate collodion photography. Before that was daguerreotypes, but starting in the 1850s, we had wet plate collodion photography, and that was a blue sensitive emulsion. And one of the early things we had to learn as photographers is that the spectral sensitivity of our film was different than what the human eye sees. And so this blue turns that blue sky almost white. And so you can tell historic images when they have those bleached out white looking skies, that was probably taken on what's called orthochromatic film, blue sensitive. Whereas white clouds have equal amounts of red, green, and blue. When you have an overly blue sensitive film, the white clouds disappear into the white of the blue sky in here. So I actually think that's kind of an interesting looking image there. But you notice the firewood sign goes away. So I'm going to go ahead and change into a lab mode, because that actually is, it equals the number of channels as the RGB, but it divides the color separately from luminosity. And so you have this lightness channel that is just looking at the straight, that's where all the texture is. And I think it's really important to recognize that when we see color, we are not seeing a lot of 3-dimensional information. Our brain processes spatial information in monochrome, and our color is just for identification purposes. It's kind of fun to see that firewood sign in blue. That's really interesting color there. So what we can do is we can turn on the lightness channel and throw away the A and B channels. And then we have a monochrome image left. And so I'll go ahead and save that. When I save an image, it actually saves it back into my Lightroom catalog. And so that's one of the nice things that I can see. That's the image we just saved right there. Okay. So now I'm going to open up one more time this image. And I'll get us back into Photoshop. And I'll show you yet one more technique in here. And that technique is to use a, oh good, we're still recording. The technique that I want to show you is using the black and white adjustment layer. Now, I want you to write down, there's 3 things I want you to pay attention to throughout this module. The first thing is understanding that a adjustment layer is non-destructive, meaning that it is a layer on top of our image. If I go over here to layers, we have a, this image already has a few layers on it. So let me turn these other layers off. Okay. So an adjustment layer is a layer that is processing how we view the image information below it. And so in this case, I have an adjustment layer that allows me to adjust the channels just like I did in the Lightroom module, the develop module of Lightroom. But I have just, I don't know, it's just a little bit different. I also have, it's designed, Photoshop is designed to be a replication of the traditional film darkroom. It uses a lot of the same terminology. And so when it comes to the black and white conversion, we used to manipulate our tone relationship with black and white film by using colored either gelatin or glass filters. And so I can use a green filter effect, or I can use a yellow filter, was quite common because it knocks that blue sky down so you see the clouds in there. Or I can go ahead and modify this a little bit further and get a custom setting there. So an adjustment layer is also nice because it has built into it the second concept I want you to pay attention to today is this concept of a layer mask. And a layer mask is a way to either hide or reveal the effect of the layer that we're working on. So here I'm affecting a black and white transition on here. But if I use my brush tool, B for brush, and if I use my default colors of D, just hitting the letter D will change my default colors back to black and white. Just to show you that again, if I select a red color, which is going to translate black and white as a gray, if I hit D, it goes straight to black and white. So if I hit the black and I paint on this mask, it's going to bring that color back. And I can adjust my opacity. And so I could create kind of a old-fashioned effect if I maybe just lowered my, I'm going to use a desaturated. Okay, let me get rid of this window here. But I could have a partial color by the fact that I'm using a layer mask. And the way layer masks work, anything that's black is hidden, anything that is white is showing through, and anything is gray is going to show through at a percentage equal to the gray value. Okay, so if I have a 50% opacity, or in this case 43% opacity, then that color information is going to show back through as I paint white.
Could you say again what the gray was?
So with the layer mask, let's take a look. Here's an adjustment layer here for contrast. Let's look at this layer mask. Everywhere I've painted black or a dark value is hiding the effect of that layer. Everything that is white is showing the effect of that layer. everything that's gray is showing the relative opacity of that gray value of that layer through the image below. All right, so I've selected all the variations that we've created. I don't need the second color one, so I'll deselect that one. Oops. Oh, I just stacked them. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's a different topic. So now I'm going to go to my print here, and let me go ahead and turn off rotation. Let me go ahead and add some grids. There we go. Double click to open that back up. All right, let me just, there we go. We'll select those. And so we've got a row. There we go. And I'll bring this down. So we got 6 images right there. And then let's go to page setup. Turn it horizontal. Boom. Okay. So now let me just go ahead and turn off our I want to turn off our rulers. So I'm going to turn off the guides, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of spacing. And then let's see if I can bring these. That's about the maximum it'll fit. Okay. So now I've got a page of all these variations on here. And what I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and put a nameplate. And so this would be one thing that you could do to add. Oh, there we go. No rotation. There we go. Add this to your PowerPoint. And I want to make this a little bit easier to read and scale it down. And I'll just put it right there. And then I just need to edit this and put my name on here. And I don't like that typeface, so I'm just going to go with a straight Helvetica. Just all business. And then I will tell it to be black. Okay. So now I've created a contact sheet that shows the variations of monochrome interpretations of this image. And I'm not telling you which one's better or not. It's just all subjective at this point. But we've at least explored it. And so I'm going to change from a printer to a JPEG file. And I'm going to set the resolution. This is really important when you're building a presentation just for a web. Make your resolution 150 pixels per inch. We don't need that much image to look, or that much resolution to look at an image on a screen. And so, and then print sharpening. In this case, I kind of feel like this is an older image that's been worked over enough, so I'm just going to do a low amount of print sharpening, and then I'm just going to hit print to file. And here is where I'll just call this my monochrome variations, and then put my last name on it. Okay. Now I'm going to stop share, and let's go back into Photoshop. Don't need this image anymore. Don't need this one. But now let's open up the contact sheet that we just created. And there you can see a wide variety of choices. Now, I haven't even started talking about dodge burn. None of these images. This is just the beginning step at this point. Okay.